journey is continuing. It's becoming even more, I think, more fascinating. I'll give you two examples. For several years now, I've been trying to go to Gaza. Now, as an Israeli, I can't go through Israel. It's against the law. So I tried to go through Egypt several times, and the Egyptians denied me. I don't know why. So finally last year, exactly last January, friends of mine organized for me to go in through a tunnel, illegally, I suppose. And so the journey was a very interesting journey, because if I go from Jerusalem to Gaza, it's an hour and 20-minute drive. It's very easy. It took me 14 hours. I had to go from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv, fly from Tel Aviv to the south, to Eilat, cross into Egypt, drive through the Sinai, go to Rafah, and then go under the ground to end up exactly 1 hour and 20 minutes from where I left that morning. And as I was sitting there, I was thinking, because I wanted to call my family and everything, I thought, I'm 1 hour and 20 minutes away from where I left this morning, and it's been 14 hours. Is this insane? I mean, can anybody explain this? Can anybody justify this? And when you do something like this, you suddenly, it's not that I didn't know, but you realize the intensity of how absurd this is. And of course, traveling in Sinai is not very nice. The roads end, especially in the north. It's kind of lawless, people walking around with guns. There's no law in the northern part of Sinai. So it's, it's not very pleasant. But then going into Gaza, you're in Palestine. And Palestine is a very nice, peaceful place, I mean, of course, it's very sad because so many people lost loved ones. Every family almost lost 2, 3, 5, 8, 14, in Israeli attacks. Problem with lack of medicine, no water fit for drinking, even though Gaza has an aquifer. It had an aquifer, but it's all been drained. I mean, everything is so much destruction, and they can't rebuild because Israel won't allow concrete, Yet the people have this energy, vitality. They work, they study, they have institutions for democracy and institutions for this and institutions for that, and they translate books by Israelis, and they study, and they're so productive. They have, I think, 5 or maybe even more universities in Gaza alone. So you get this sense of what a positive place it is, and how they're being punished just because of who they are. So that was one chapter in the journey that was very interesting. Another one, which is more cultural, I was in Jerusalem in the summer, and the Palestinian holiday of Ramadan. It's a whole month where you fast during the day, and then at night people eat and go out and party. It's very nice. And I was meeting somebody in the old city of Jerusalem. And they didn't come, never mind, I was stuck there. Have you been to Jerusalem? Have you been to Palestine?
No, not yet.
Well, one of the gates to the old city, it's called Damascus Gate. It's a beautiful gate. Very large plaza, And it was about 9 o'clock at night, and I could see that they were preparing some big event with lights and microphones. And millions of people, families and children, all celebrating the evening, after, and decorations. It was beautiful. And they started, singing and dancing, and band after band after band of drummers and dancers and singers, and everybody's dancing and eating, and it's just this sense of festival, And I thought to myself, I grew up here. Not there, but I grew up, a few kilometers from there. 5-minute drive from there. And I never knew this happened. I never knew this happened. Such a beautiful occasion, so much festivity, so much happiness, this whole, like a family festival. Israelis don't know anything about the Palestinians. You see something like this, you appreciate the society, you appreciate their culture, you appreciate, just how nice it is. Israelis don't know about this. For them it's still dangerous to go there because so many Arabs, And so that's, again, another step in this journey of, first of all, appreciating this country that I was born in and these people who are my neighbors, but also appreciating how much Israelis don't know and how much they need to learn if something is going to change. That's a good idea, but that's not how it happens. It doesn't happen that way. It happens the opposite. People who have privilege, who have privileged status, don't volunteer to learn about the other. You know, racism comes with arrogance, which is why racists always fall. They always lose in the end because they're so arrogant. They don't look at the other. They can't, because they have no culture. They're nothing, you know. And this is the problem with Israelis. It's the same thing if you read about society, Afrikaner society in South Africa. They knew nothing about the Africans. Even though the African maids that worked for them and raised their children, they knew nothing about their customs, about their languages, about their fears, about anything, you know, about their religions. And this is the same thing. So you can't wait for it to happen because that's not how it happens. It happens the other way around. Once these privileged societies fall and are suddenly forced to live, you know, in peace and with democracy and share the rights with everybody else, then they realize, then they start to learn. They do happen. There are projects like this, very small. Yeah. There are projects like this where they bring kids from here and there and to America or to Europe and they do camps and all this, and it's all very nice. But there's a little bit of a problem with that. I mean, it's very nice, it's a good idea, they meet each other, and some of them are actually very good programs. But many of these programs end up being very bad for the Palestinians. Because it creates the impression that there is equality. It creates the impression that there's some kind of normality here. In fact, it's called normalization. Because afterwards, when they come back, the Palestinians go back to the occupation and to be oppressed, and the Israelis go back to living a privileged life and eventually go to the army. So when I hear about projects like this, I always ask the organizers, if they've been doing this for a long time, how many Israelis do you know that did your project, went through the program, refused to serve in the army? Because this is a real measure. You know if you succeeded. Because if you spend weeks or a month or a summer or whatever it is with other people, how can you then become a soldier and go back and be the oppressor as a soldier? And if it doesn't do that, then something is wrong. So some of these programs are very good and they do bring them together. But some of them just create this feeling that everything is okay. Here we can go together to programs, we can go to Europe together, we can eat together, and we can be happy together. Okay, and now we go home, and now what? Where's the change? Where's the next step? And quite often that next step is missing. Well, normal soldiers don't protect their country. Normal soldiers humiliate and torture people. The idea that soldiers protect their country is kind of idealistic. It doesn't ever happen. They usually protect the regime at the expense of the people. But when you're a soldier, you're one little thing in an ocean, and there's no such, you know, it's not enough. It's not enough to be the one soldier who doesn't humiliate. You should be the one person that refuses to be there to begin with. You know? It's like it's like stories of, and I know this is, whenever I make comparisons, people say, oh, you're comparing. I'm not comparing, but as an example, you know, soldiers in a concentration camp that, I don't know, some old lady was working and he gave her a chair. So he was a very nice Nazi soldier, you know? He was still in the camp. You have to oppose the regime. You know, and so I don't think it's good enough, no. Okay, well, let me ask you a question, okay? I'm against racism. What's your opinion?
Me too.
Okay. See what I mean? There is no room here for understanding, for debate. You're either against racism or you're for racism, right? And you have to make it very clear because this is the issue, you know? And so, on an issue like racism, you have to take sides because there are sides. You can pretend that there are no sides all day long, but there are clear sides. You either support a racist regime or you oppose a racist regime. You can't say, well, maybe if we're nice, maybe they'll change their mind, maybe they'll be, you know, that's not how it works. That's not what happens. If you have a racist regime, you have to oppose it, or you accept it. but you can't be in the middle. So, in a way, debates like this are very strange because it's like you're inviting somebody who supports racism and you pretend that that person is equal to somebody who's fighting racism. You know, is that acceptable? Can you imagine in the past, you know, especially in Europe, inviting people from both sides? Okay, here's a Nazi and here's an anti-Nazi. Now let's talk. I know this is a tough comparison. I'm not saying Israelis are Nazis, but I think it's important to make it very vivid, very clear. You know, you can't be nice about this. Well, the people that I met, the people that came to my presentation were very nice and very welcoming, you know, but I hear this in almost every country I go to. In Canada, in places in Europe, certainly in the United States, where the people tell me that the situation is very bad on this issue because the government, you know, is very pro-Israel, and the prime minister and the president is like wants to be super, super, super Jewish and super, super, super love Netanyahu, that sort of thing. Yet I go to lectures, and this is a very small room, but you know, sometimes I have bigger rooms and they're full of people who come to listen. And then I go to university campuses and I see hundreds and hundreds of students supporting the Palestinian cause. And I go to churches and I see hundreds of people come to listen to my anti-Zionist perspective. So I think there's a disconnect, both here in Europe and in America, between the politicians and the people, you know. Because I hear this everywhere. Oh, you know, our politicians, they're so pro-Israel, they're so pro-Israel. I was in Vienna, it was the same thing. In the UK, it's the same thing. It's the same thing in many places. Yet people come to hear this, and people come to talk, and people come to support. So I think there's change, but it's a grassroots change. And eventually it'll come up, and the politicians will have to change as well. But of course, they'll change last.